Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay. Hey guys. Preemptive, like, Imperial War Museums, great channel. Operation Postmaster, it's a previous thumbnail it had. The one right now isn't loading. The British were something else in World War II. The incredible true story of the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Let's get started. My name's Connor if you're new. Hey guys. Let's learn.
In the early stages of the Second World War, Germany had a stranglehold on most of mainland Europe and had set their sights on Britain. The Luftwaffe attacked in the air in the Battle of Britain, whilst at sea, German U-boats posed an ever-increasing threat in the Battle of the Atlantic. A newly appointed Winston Churchill was running out of conventional ways to fight back, and entirely new methods of waging war had to be devised. This would lead to the birth of the modern Special Forces, and one of their very first missions was perhaps the riskiest operation in the Second World War.
The British in the Second World War, I think, are... I'm not just saying this because a lot of you guys watching this are British, okay? I'm not trying to butter you up or anything. I truly mean this. The British in the Second World War, I think, are not praised as much as they should be. And they are praised a lot. I'm not saying that the British aren't praised in World War II, but you know, you think about the Soviets, so many people died, and in the end, if it wasn't for them, Germany might have succeeded and been able to hold off the invasion of Normandy. And then America gets praised for just, you know, being on the other side of the Atlantic and having this massive industrial output. But I feel like Britain was kind of the linchpin that held everything together. And the fact that Britain didn't succumb to Nazi bombing and conquering, I think allowed for the other big powers in the USSR and the USA to eventually pick up steam and then bring full force, you know? And the fact that the British didn't have that giant land army capability in Europe yet, like the Soviets eventually had, or massive industrial output like the Americans, they came up with such ingenious things and were extremely ballsy in a lot of operations, obviously. Let's go.
The success was perhaps the riskiest operation in the Second World War.
The chances of success were very low. The chances of it going wrong were very high. The chances of it backfiring on Britain were extremely real, but the chance of survival for those who were tasked with that mission were negligible as well.
This was Operation Postmaster, an audacious and complex mission involving layers of secrecy, blackmail and espionage on a level never before seen in 20th century warfare. And whilst the rewards for a successful mission were great, the consequences if it failed could have proven catastrophic.
Had the British government been proven to be behind it, had it been proven this was a British operation, then almost undoubtedly that would have provoked Spain to join the war on the...
Wait, so is this the one where they attacked the French base after France was taken over? But then he just talked about Spain. I'm going to stop talking.
Then almost undoubtedly that would have provoked Spain to join the war on the side of the Nazis.
We spoke to author and historian Damien Lewis, whose book, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, tells the story of the elite group of individuals that executed this mission.
Most of the commanders who, certainly in the early stages of World War II, most of the British commanders had cut their eye teeth in the First World War. Most of them were still stuck in that mindset of trench warfare, gentlemanly warfare, static warfare, and the rules of war as dictated by World War I. And at that stage, Churchill and a few senior war leaders...
That was a super tiny shell.
War I. And
look at how small that is.
At that stage, Churchill and a few senior war leaders in Britain, but not many, took the view that we needed a means to strike back which was dynamic and unorthodox.
This was the idea behind British Special Operations. Small groups of highly trained soldiers who operate behind enemy lines, sabotaging and disrupting Axis operations without the need for a head-on assault.
And Operation Postmaster was their first real operation that actually went down on the ground. So it was proof of concept for those kind of operations. And the idea behind it was audacious and risk-laden in the extreme.
Off the coast of West Africa was the island of Fernando Po, now modern-day Biocco. The Allies had come to learn that in this port were 3 enemy ships, a large Italian merchant vessel called the Duchessa d'Aosta, and a large German tug and barge called Lecomba and Burundi. It was suspected that these ships were part of a covert U-boat rearming operation, which would allow German Atlantic U-boat fleets to rearm, resupply, and be repaired at Fernando Po, without having to sail to Germany or France. At this stage in the war, the U-boat battle was a major threat to Britain.
Okay, but so the Germans don't have to go to
resupply, and be repaired at Fernando Po, without having to sail to Germany or France.
It seems so out of the way, though. I mean, how much... I'd imagine most of the German U-boat activity was in the North Atlantic, and so this seems like a giant detour.
And be repaired at Fernando Po, without having to sail to Germany or France.
What do I know?
At this stage in the war, the U-boat battle was a major threat to Britain, and the opportunity to take out one of their supply routes was one Churchill was not going to ignore. But there was a problem. Fernando Po was a neutral Spanish territory, meaning the rules of war forbid any kind of military operations in this area.
And so Postmaster was a mission put together to sink or steal those ships in such a way that the British government could always deny we had ever been responsible. Now, if you try and imagine the stakes involved in an operation like that, had the British government been proven to be behind it, then almost undoubtedly that would have provoked Spain to join the war on the side of the Nazis. The fact that Churchill backed Operation Postmaster, he backed it against many of his senior commanders and many senior politicians. It almost beggars belief. Because
guys, I know that Germany supplied a lot of, I believe, I said I know, I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty certain Germany supplied a lot of aid in the Spanish Civil War so that the nationalists would come out on top, right? And it's kind of comical that after helping, I'm not sure how much he helped, is it Franco, win, but you would have thought, and especially after the fall of France, that Spain would have, been like, okay, I'm on your side, but they still weren't. And I wonder what their reasoning was, because, all right, maybe they didn't want to like threaten France too much, but then France fell. So what was the deal there? And I'm wondering if something unknown would mean they wouldn't have even joined if this was found out, but I don't know.
And many senior politicians. It almost beggars belief because the stakes were so high.
In order to carry out these special operations, an entirely new and elite arm of the military had to be created. The Commandos were formed in June 1940 at the order of Winston Churchill. He called for a specially trained group of volunteers.
So I would get the Commandos and SAS confused, so they're two different entities.
Commando recruits were specially trained in navigation, survival skills, silent killing, hand-to-hand combat, amphibious assault, rock climbing, improvised weapons, explosives, and more. They were forged into elite combatants who were capable of surviving behind enemy lines and undertaking special raids and operations unlike any other units. Around the same time as the Commandos, the Special Operations Executive was also formed. The SOE would undertake sabotage, espionage, and reconnaissance within occupied Europe.
I'm sure there are a lot of very intelligent, very witty, smart, and very physically tough people all over the army, right? But knowing that you have a force that has plucked those people from throughout the army who are just super capable, strong, and extremely intelligent, and put them all in one group is a little terrifying, also really cool.
He would undertake sabotage, espionage, and reconnaissance.
It's like there's no weak link, they're all the strong link. Does that make sense? Okay.
units. Around the same time as the commandos, the Special Operations Executive was also formed. The SOE would undertake sabotage, espionage and reconnaissance within occupied Europe. The number 62 Commando, or the Small-Scale Raiding Force, was made up of a small group of commandos who reported directly to the SOE. Leading this group was Gustavus Henry March Phillips, Operation Postmaster, rested firmly on his shoulders. The plan was to steal these 3 enemy ships from the harbour and sail them out to international waters, where a Royal Navy ship would happen upon them and seize them as a prize of war.
Which you can do under international law. If you find enemy warships in international waters, you can seize them as prizes. So there are these wonderful files in the SOE archives where you had the political warfare executive, which was part of the SOE set up to do propaganda operations, where they had written the press releases to send to the media long before Postmaster even set sail, you know, lauding the fact that they had found these ships in international waters and putting out the cover story.
For a second, I thought they might be trying to come up with reasoning as to why there might be ships down there. Because if you're Spain and, you know, you're trying to think about who could have done this, I mean, you only have a few likely culprits who are able to do this and have a reason to do so. And just so happen to have a British ship out there might put up some red flags. So I wonder if they premeditatedly, is that a word? Kind of came up with some idea as to why they were down there.
And the cover story was that the German and Italian crews had got dissatisfied with their conditions in pay in Fernando Po, had mutinied, sailed the ships into international waters, which is where we had found them.
Before March Phillips and his team could begin the raid, they had to gather as much intelligence as possible about the harbour and the crews on the ships they were targeting, and their approach to gathering this information could only be described as creative.
They realised that the very pro-Nazi governor of Fernando Po had a local mistress. And so they filmed him one day with her naked in the bath and him pouring a watering can of water over her before whatever they were intending to do. And then they let the governor of Fernando Po know they had those photographs. And they said, well, you know, we can keep quiet about this as long as you allow us to use your plane to fly some surveillance missions over the harbour to take photographs, which you can say are just sightseeing trips. So that's how they got all their surveillance photographs. And then one of the SOE agents acted as if he was delivering mail between the British consulate and another of the British embassy offices. And to do that, he said, I need to row across the harbour. So he's rowing across the harbour. It was a really hot day in Biocco, and he was, you know, acted as if he was tired, and he paused by the anchor chain, and he grabbed the anchor chain to hold on to whilst he was taking a breather. And doing that, he put his hands around it and managed to measure the circumference of the anchor chain, which then enabled them to work out what kind of charge was required to blow up the anchor chain.
Everything was falling into place, but there was still one massive obstacle: the German and Italian officers who crewed the ships. The solution to this problem came when SOE agent Richard Lippett, who was working undercover at a shipping company on the island, learned that the crews liked to live an active social life.
So they decided to have a party, and the party would involve lots of free drink, lots of free food, and lots of very pretty ladies to tent the German and Italian crews. They had a first test party on shore, which was organised by the SOE agents who were in Fernando Po posing as diplomats. And then that went off really well. The German and Italian officers thought, well, we went to that party, we were a bit suspicious, nothing bad happened. So when the second party was organised for the same night that they were going to steal the ships, all the German and Italian officers left their ships, went ashore and drank the night away.
All of the pieces were now in place. So, on the morning of January 11th, 1942, March Phillips and his force of 4 SOE agents and 11 commandos left their base in Lagos on 2 tugboats, Vulcan and Nuneaton, operated by an additional 17 local recruits. On the evening of the 14th, they arrived at the harbour. A small crew from the Nuneaton set off in kayaks to capture Burundi and Lukomba, whilst March Phillips and the crew of the Vulcan boarded the Duquesa d'Aosta. They quickly took command of the ships and took the crew prisoners. Whilst the ship's officers were enjoying their party ashore, the small-scale raiding force placed explosive devices on the ship's anchor chains.
They took out all the electricity supply for the whole of Fernando Po. So the moment the ships were going to be taken, the the whole of the harbour area went dark.
At the moment the power went out, the explosives were detonated.
There's so much that goes into this. There's so many little details that they happen to carry out.
The area went dark.
At the moment the power went out, the explosives were detonated, releasing the anchor chains. At this point, it was clear to the party guests what was going on, but it was too late for them to do anything about it. The commandos towed the captured boats out to international waters.
I can just imagine like German officers coming out, like still kind of have, I don't know, the party going and like running out there and just like screaming and like taking the hat and throwing it on the ground. Classic movie scene style. I can't speak English right now. I'm sorry.
Towed the captured boats out to international waters, where they were conveniently discovered and subsequently captured by the British HMS Violet 2 days later.
How convenient.
The whole operation, from entering the harbour to leaving with the captured ships, had taken just half an hour.
On all levels, Postmaster was a mission that really shouldn't have happened and really shouldn't have succeeded, and no one really should have survived. Postmaster is the most extraordinary story because they pulled it off. And I tell you how they pulled it off. They pulled it off
by carrying out, by knowing how to do everything and making sure, like, it's something on its face value that was so possible to fail, right? But with all of the little things they did, like knowing there was a party before, and then there was going to be a party, did they say the next night? And so they weren't as suspicious, and going ashore and knowing the thickness of the chain. It's like, overall, it was probably extremely risky, but the fact that they knew everything and did it perfectly, it means that it was probably very unlikely that they get caught.
Off because of that same incredible, audacious thinking and doing the unexpected and breaking all the rules of war.
Whilst Operation Postmaster did not single-handedly halt the U-boat operations in the region, it was still a significant blow to German supply lines in West Africa. But perhaps more importantly, Churchill had sent a very clear message. He would do whatever it takes and employ every possible tactic to ensure victory, even if it means breaking the traditional rules of war. The era of gentlemanly warfare was over, and Churchill's secret warriors were just getting started.
The Mission on Gentlemanly Warfare, the book, has been filmed as a Guy Ritchie directed movie. The movie covers Operation Postmaster only. The book covers Operation Postmaster through to that same band of individuals following them all the way through the war. The movie is it's based upon a true story. It's a Guy Ritchie movie, so be ready for some kind of like, stretching of the facts, but it stretches the truth in ways that maybe was necessary. It's drama. It's a movie. The true story is the book, The Ministry of Gentlemanly Warfare, and that covers, dozens and dozens of equally audacious and incredible missions.
Fantastic. Hey, it's the guy. Fantastic. Something I'm sure only the British could have pulled off with such precision. Fantastic. When I think of World War II stuff, I don't think about the Gulf of Guinea or, around Central Africa. So it's really nice to learn about that. I've said pretty much all I wanted to say in the video. Would appreciate any comments. As always, guys, you're always great with that. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.